Hello and welcome to the Fundraising Unlocked Podcast, where I give actionable tips to founders every week on how to raise more, better, faster, and on better terms with the best investors. So this one is a really common theme that happens, but recently I was speaking to a founder that I was potentially going to work with, and he was talking about, we were talking about building the network and how he wasn't able to meet other investors and what kind of tactics he was doing, all those kind of things. And the big thing he said he was doing, he truly believed that this was the way in which he was going to meet enough investors, was purely just around events. He said, I've got, an event every week that I can go to, and therefore that's all I need to do, and I'm going to meet enough investors. Now, I see this all the time. Frankly, I see it all the time. Founders coming to me without a real knowledge of how to build a network and understanding of a fundraise, saying that all I need to do is DM people on LinkedIn or go to these events and I'm going to meet investors. Now, I'm going to tell you why that doesn't work, right? And why, if you really do that, you're always going to have a bad time and you're not going to give yourself the highest chance of success with fundraising. So, when it comes to events, the biggest problem when it comes to events in fundraising, especially, but it's just every time we're building, is you think you're going to these events and everyone's going to love you and you're going to give, some of your cards away and you're going to have some good chats, etc., etc. However, you don't really understand what it's like to be an investor at these events. When I was at Octopus, we were a tier 1 fund, one of the best funds in Europe, we're a large fund. Every time that I went to an event, whether I was speaking or even if I was there, I would start to get bombarded with founders coming to me. As soon as they found out that I was money bags, they would be, surrounding me pretty much. That's why sometimes VCs have a little bit of an ego, is a lot of the time they have a lot of people, coming to them and treating them not like gods, but pretty much like gods, right? And events were a great example of that, right? I had not hundreds, but many, many founders coming to me, treating me like I was the most, important person in that event, purely because they knew that I had money and was willing to invest. Now, the problem there was because of that, in a 2 or 3 day event especially, but even if it was like an evening event or a full day event, whatever it was, I got drowned out from all of these founders bombarding me with either, information on their company, on the things that problems happening in their company, on them trying to pitch me on their company, all of these kind of things. And usually what would happen is I'd have, basically a deck of cards in company names and people that I've met at this event. And it was really hard for me to really know which one was interesting, right? And all of those founders were trying to gauge my information, my attention, and only a few of them were ever actually, would I actually be willing to actually email, right, and get back to. So the big problem with going to events is you're a 1 in a million, right? You're never going to be that one that they're going to say, wow, this is amazing. That's the first thing, right? The second thing is you can never really build trust over like a 10, 20 minute conversation that you have, right? So whilst you're trying to do that, you're also trying to make that investor feel like, wow, you're the best. So you need to have a really great narrative. You need to do the work in that if you're going to do this. And you need to be really structured in how you do your networking. And then once you're in that, you need to be hooked, you need to hook them into it. And you can't really do that in an event properly. Because say that we us two were just actually having this conversation and we're in an event and we're only speaking for 10 minutes and I've still had 20, 30 other conversations previously and I'm going to have another 10 plus after. How are you going to make sure that I trust you enough that I'm willing to follow up? And this is this problem with events, right? You can't ever really do that in the right way. So what would happen usually is these deck of cards would just basically go into the desk, right? Never in the drawer, never to be seen again. And maybe 1 or 2 of those people at these events would actually make an investor want to take action and maybe reply. So that's a really big, another reason why. The third reason when it comes to events and the problem with you thinking that this should be your main tactic is you can never really create the perception of you're an amazing company just by doing this, right? And a big problem there is that founders that I've seen, and it was exactly the same for me for my first two my first 2 companies that I started, right? I didn't even meet an investor for my first one. My second one, I met a few investors, but not enough, like 5 to 10. Within those, I went to so many events expecting something, but no one ever got back to me. But for me, events felt like I was doing something, right? It felt like I was doing something because I was going to this thing, I was spending 3 hours, I was talking to people, but at the end of it, nothing ever came out of it. Nothing of substance. And I was wasting my time and my money going to these events and having those, free wines and talking to random people all the time without actually being structured of who's actually gonna help me here, and how am I actually gonna benefit. And that's the problem with most events. Right, and now look, you'll probably have some examples of this event, and then someone did it, and they met this person, and then they got a funding round done from that. That can potentially happen, right? We went to, us at Octopus, we went to basically the last stage with the company. So just before we were going to invest, we unfortunately said no to this founder, but we met her in an event, right? So it is possible, but for 99% of the time, this is not the way you're going to meet the investors that are actually going to invest into you. Now, look, these events can be beneficial to you to raise awareness. They can be an addition to what you're doing, but you should never treat events or putting your pitch deck into an investor website as the be all end all. It's not the way this industry works, and you really need to be a lot more structured in how you build your network and getting those warm connections and building the perception of you as a great company and founder. That's what's really going to move the needle for you in a funding round. So when you're thinking about your network, you can't just think of winging it. You can't just think, hey, when I'm close to fundraising, I'll just do these certain things and it'll be okay. You need to take a much more long-term structured process of building out and mapping out your network and really understanding where you sit, and then being structured in how you launch and prepare in the right way to give yourself the highest chance in getting to those 50, 60, 70 plus meetings. Hopefully that's helpful. If you have any questions, let me know and we can kind of discuss.